A twin-engine transport plane soared inconspicuously through the night sky above the Empire's eastern border region, with its navigation lights extinguished. The camouflaged aircraft flew toward its destination under cover of darkness, its paint job designed to obscure its nationality. Originally, a fighter craft outfitted with every possible countermeasure against detection, the plane carried personnel who constituted practically an Imperial military secret. Major Tanya von Degurechaff, commander of the Special Operations Group assigned to this long-range reconnaissance mission, gave a small inward sigh while wishing someone would trade places with her. The 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion operated under the direct command of the Imperial Army General Staff and possessed the authority to act independently, having proven themselves useful across multiple fronts. Tanya cradled her head in her hands and lamented her inability to escape combat despite her desire to avoid fighting. She recalled her brief happiness several hours prior upon landing in the Imperial capital after returning from the Southern Front. Tanya had believed the summons home meant leave and rotation away from the front lines. Colonel von Lurgan and Major Uger appeared to receive her report, with Lurgan praising the battalion's achievements and promising to expedite decoration applications. Tanya had asked about the general state of affairs in the capital, noticing Major Uger's hesitant expression only after committing to her full complement of troops. Tanya realized she should have claimed her unit was exhausted and unfit for combat, but the officer from Strategic Reconnaissance and Operations appeared before she could react. The General Staff had effectively trapped her into accepting a mission to cross the border under the official pretext of an exercise. The unit was bundled aboard the Special Operations aircraft without being told their destination and took off with suspicious orders that no one believed. First Lieutenant Grants hurled spare combat orbs and ammunition into the plane, while First Lieutenant Serebryakov inspected and appropriated radio sets. Captain Weiss busied himself stuffing chocolate bars into the unit's packs. The seasoned officers realized they were flying toward the eastern border rather than the exercise ranges. Tanya lamented not having remained on the southern continent assisting General von Rommel against the colonial defense forces. She had expected to enjoy spring in the Empire proper or garrison duty amounting to a paid vacation, but instead faced a secret mission violating Federation territory. The mission broke various laws of war, though the Federation had not ratified many of them, leaving Tanya unable to question the validity of her orders. Tanya called Captain Weiss to her side and requested he verify the time on his watch against the sealed envelope. Upon confirming the hour, she ripped open the missive to reveal documents ordering reconnaissance to scout out Federation forces. The papers indicated that Federation forces were massing along the border in preparation for a major offensive, with multiple border canaries chirping warnings. The Eastern Army Group had remained stationed on the border throughout previous conflicts, maintaining vigilance against the communist threat. Captain Weiss expressed doubt that the Federation would attack now, but Tanya noted that the General Staff's certainty suggested they possessed information beyond the obvious. Tanya decided they would drop under the assumption that they were heading into combat. She requested that Captain Weiss brief the troops because her voice would not carry over the engine noise. Weiss thundered an explanation that the battalion would perform reconnaissance across the border due to a mishap during their exercise, citing highly specialized rules of engagement. He reported that the Eastern Army Group's 437th Tactical Special Reconnaissance Platoon had sent a distress signal before going silent, followed by other platoons. Tanya addressed the troops, joking about her lost devil's tail and emphasizing that stealth remained their highest priority. She explained that the transport plane would accidentally violate Federation airspace due to technical difficulties with navigation instruments, serving as their cover story. Tanya noted that the mission was politically sensitive and warned that their enlistment records might be erased if captured. She refused to grant permission for preemptive strikes, insisting they wait for the Federation to fire first. The captain of the flight offered to serve as a decoy by continuing to violate Federation airspace after the drop. Tanya threw open the door and shouted for the battalion to drop, leaping out into the darkness herself. She landed in wild backcountry and quickly regrouped with her troops, finding no losses among the elite unit. Lieutenant Serebryakov reported that regrouping was complete with no enemy contact, while Lieutenant Grants maintained watch. Captain Weiss reported that the long-range wireless was operational and monitoring showed heightened Federation transmissions, but no declaration of war yet. Weiss offered to lead the approach toward the enemy staging area due to concerns about Tanya's physical stature for the No Magic March, but she declined. Tanya decided to lead the reconnaissance herself with Degurechaff and two others, leaving Weiss in command of the main force. The officers advanced on foot without magic and observed the Federation staging area through binoculars. They spotted huge amounts of supplies, live ammunition, tank divisions, not supposed to be stationed in the region according to treaty, and railway guns in forward positions with barrels adjusting. Tanya observed soldiers boarding trucks near piles of fuel and shells, confirming the 437's warning was accurate. She ordered the unit to maintain radio silence until the railway guns actually fired toward the Empire. Weiss prepared the long-range encoded signal machine using an on-time pad to report their findings. The unit faced the dilemma of observing clear preparations for war, while technically unable to attack preemptively due to political constraints and their presence in neutral territory. On June 25th of Unified Year 1926, Lieutenant Colonel Tanya von Degurechaff sorted paperwork at a General Staff recuperation facility outside the Imperial capital. Analysis of recent aerial combat reports consumed her attention. Rear area duty remained the motivational force behind every calculation she made. The declining quality of cold coffee provided a bitter metaphor for the Empire's deteriorating strategic situation. Recent promotion to Magic Lieutenant Colonel brought private satisfaction. Lieutenant General von Degurechaff praised her treatise unit usage and operational maneuvers in the current war, suggesting a permanent desk assignment with the General Staff's Strategic Research Office. Tranquil nights without patrol missions represented the first step toward the normalcy she craved. An unexpected appearance by Captain Weiss at her office door interrupted the calm. The Vice Commander requested that the entirety of the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion continue serving under her command in a new Kampfgruppe. Bewilderment crossed Tanya's features since no such assignment existed in her understanding. A telephone summons from Lieutenant General von Degurechaff interrupted their discussion. Approval of her strategic proposals for immediate implementation came through the line. Orders to form the Salamander Kampfgruppe and deploy to the Eastern Front within 5 days replaced triumph with horror. Disbelief petrified her momentarily at the impossibly short timeline. Absolute obedience remained mandatory despite internal screams of protest. Acceptance of the command hardened into professional resolve. Weiss saluted with exhilaration at the prospect of following her into combat. In Unified Year 1980, a World TV Network correspondent named Andrew narrated the legend of the salamander to Black Friday shoppers in New York. The metaphor described soldiers transformed into uncontrollable brats through excessive indulgence. 2 days later, Tanya reviewed personnel lists at the General Staff Office main building. Documents revealed assignments of inexperienced 2nd Reserve Infantry battalions and obsolete replacement artillery. Murderous rage contorted her features. An equipment section major faced her explosive confrontation regarding the inferior allocations. Demands for modern Model G tanks instead of obsolete Model IVD training vehicles followed. General von Rommel's letter facilitated an exchange of armor for urgently needed fuel supplies. Requisition requests for seized Republic armored vehicles to convert into self-propelled guns further burdened the bewildered supply officer. Lieutenant General von Degurechaff faced audacious requests for an additional mage company the following morning. Skepticism marked the general's initial response given existing shortages. Necessity of an anvil to support the aerial battalion's hammer justified the request.
Reluctant approval came for a company of raw recruits barely half-trained.
Explosive fury greeted the officers of the 332nd Infantry Battalion when they questioned her authority and demanded independent discretion. She deemed immediate replacement necessary. A battalion of Fallschirmjäger paratroopers from the 2nd Guard Division offered the solution. Negotiations with the 2nd Guard Division secured their transfer despite bureaucratic obstacles. On July 1st, the establishment ceremony convened in a General Staff Office conference room. Standing upon a raised dais, Tanya addressed assembled troops, her childlike appearance contrasting with the bloodthirsty veterans before her. New infantry and artillery components received threats disguised as welcoming smiles. Colonel von Lergen stormed into Lieutenant General von Zetour's office the next day. Inside that chamber, vehement protests erupted against Tanya's appointment and her appropriation of elite paratrooper units. Zetour dismissed these concerns while explaining the operational necessity of testing Kampfgruppe doctrine. Discussion shifted to Operation Lakeside, the eastern offensive designed to annihilate Federation field armies. In the Federation capital of Moskva on July 8th, Commissar Loria presented strategic proposals to Comrade General Secretary Josef. Ceding border territory would draw Imperial forces into urban attrition battles. Blocking units from the Commissariat for Internal Affairs would prevent Federation retreats. Concentration and labor camp inmates would serve as expendable reinforcements. Personal obsession drove Loria's specific request to capture Tanya von Degurechaff. By July 18th, the Salamander Kampfgruppe conducted flank patrol operations across muddy eastern terrain. A deliberately relaxed posture characterized Tanya's approach to the armed hiking assignment. Deep within the Imperial General Staff Office War Room 2, Lieutenant Generals pored over maps showing retreating lines. 10 days of combat against the Federation had pushed the Eastern Army Group back from the border. Grumbling erupted from Lieutenant General von Rudersdorf regarding the chronic shortage of Eastern troops. Lieutenant General von Zetour countered with fresh signals intelligence reports. 150 Federation divisions faced the Empire in the east alone. Southward marched another 25 divisions toward Dacia. Estimates had utterly failed to predict such staggering numerical superiority. To concentrate so many forces defied logic given the Federation's vast territory. Only 60 divisions could the Imperial Army currently mobilize. Previous Rhine campaigns had depleted the officer corps critically. Seized Republican artillery armed the second-string reserves inadequately. Why had Zetour withheld the personnel crisis? Rudersdorf demanded to know. Bureaucratic jurisdiction explained the delay in reporting. Drawing reinforcements from Dacia became Rudersdorf's next proposal. Zetour suggested scorched earth tactics in Dacia instead of mobile warfare. Swift, decisive battles remained the operations doctrine preference. Poor infrastructure and horse shortages dictated logistical reality. Heated debate erupted over Air Force allocation between the friends.
Rudersdorf insisted aerial forces support rapid ground offensives.
Zetour warned that 50 Commonwealth divisions threatened the rear. Slowing enemy advances through air power represented Zetour's alternative strategy. Political pressure mounted to avoid any territorial losses whatsoever. Whispers of Major von Degurechaff's Moskva excesses reached the room. Zetour defended the Major as a brilliant strategist, loyal to state reason. Deployment plans formed for the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion as vanguard. Temporary Camp 21 erupted in celebrations upon the battalion's return. One toast marked Major von Degurechaff's excusal for recovery. A bugle call shattered the peace after merely half a day. Scrambling to headquarters came Captain Weiss and First Lieutenant Serebriakov. Tongue lashings awaited Lieutenant Grants for his hangover. General Staff orders commanded immediate mobile mission preparation. Surrounded in Tigenhof were the 3rd and 32nd Divisions. Rescue requests initially tempted Tanya to refuse in favor of primary objectives. Strategic analysis revealed Tigenhof's value as key terrain. Aerial photographs showed no enemy heavy artillery present. Railway guns within range posed a caution from First Lieutenant Serebriakov. Lack of forward observers rendered indirect fire ineffective against them. Rescue plans merged seamlessly with the mobile mission objectives. Unofficial supplies of alcohol and cigarettes loaded onto the departing mages. Into the besieged city launched the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion. Devastating anti-surface strikes smashed the encircling Federation units. Major Hoffen of the 213th Mage Battalion offered grateful greetings. Medical aid and supplies flowed toward the relieved defenders. Joyful news reached the war room regarding the breakthrough. Vital supply lines remained secure thanks to the rescue. Tension suffocated the Federation main attack group headquarters. Responsibility for halting the advance terrified both generals and commissars. Exaggerated reports to Moskva masked the danger of encirclement. The Commissariat for Internal Affairs inspired greater fear than the enemy. One political officer had already disappeared for requesting mage unit transfers. Unrealistic reports awaited his replacement during briefing. Attacking Tegenhof offered a political excuse to concentrate forces. 8 divisions descended upon the city without aerial support. Lieutenant Serebriakoff smacked Major von Degurechaff awake with urgent news. Naivety regarding communist flexibility drew curses from Tanya. Immediate scramble preparation occupied Captain Weiss. Consultations at divisional headquarters awaited Tanya's arrival. 8 attackers faced 2 undermanned defending divisions. Into the skies rose the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion. No enemy aerial mages appeared to contest their dominance. Repeated anti-surface attacks devastated the exposed infantry below. 7 separate enemy ground divisions fell under their assault. Exhaustion and depleted ammunition forced the order to withdraw. Absence of enemy mage forces became glaringly apparent. 8 wrecked divisions marked the one-sided victory. Morning reports confirmed the success to Lieutenant General von Rudersdorf. Victory declarations prompted plans to flood the front with reinforcements.
Colonel von Lurgan sighed for the umpteenth time that morning, his face grim with resignation.
Inside the General Staff Office, high-ranking officers and staffers gathered with visible reluctance. Because political demands had forced this court of inquiry, military necessity took a back seat to bureaucratic theater. Lieutenant General von Zator slammed the wooden mallet down to begin proceedings. Throughout the assembled officers, irritation rippled at the waste of their time. Before the judicial officer could speak, Zator issued a stern warning about public logs and full attendance. He presided over the defense of Major Tanya von Degurechaff with barely concealed fury.
Due to the successful raid on the Federation capital, the 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion commander faced allegations of excessive force and independent action.
Military logic deemed the raid forgivable, yet civilian authorities misused the inquiry process. With military precedent and army memos, the defense proved the attack targeted only party and military facilities. Even the prosecution's counterarguments trailed off into silence. The verdict came swiftly as Zator declared the allegations refuted and Tanya's name cleared. With the inquiry concluded, Lurgan prepared to discuss Tanya's next assignment. Lurgan led her to a private room at the General Staff Office to ask about her preferred station. When she requested rear service, shock nearly knocked the colonel backward. Disbelief rooted itself in Lurgan's mind at the request from the infamous Rusted Silver to replace herself. She recommended Captain Weiss as the new commander of the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion. Outrage thundered through the General Staff Office at the news. Bursting into the room, Zator hurled the assignment memo to the floor. Papers scattered in a fluttering mess from the force of his rage. At the display, genuine dumbfounded confusion marked her features. Beneath her professional mask, frustration puffed her cheeks.
She appeared childlike in her assurance of correct conduct.
Zator demanded to know why an elite officer would abandon frontline duty. At the implication of abandoning duty, perplexity crossed her features. During the tense exchange, she insisted her request stemmed from personal annoyance with frontline bureaucracy. Eventually, the conversation shifted to strategic analysis of the Federation. Tanya explained the Federation attacked from existential fear of the Empire's existence. Prioritizing survival above diplomatic reason, their exclusionary paranoia drove every decision. Therefore, early peace remained impossible, as the Federation would fight until mutual destruction.
Horror dawned on Lurgan at the realization that total war was inevitable.
Granting a reprieve, Zator assigned her 2 months on the Western Front to write strategic research. Earlier that month, deep beneath Moskva, the Federation's inner circle gathered in terror. Comrade, General Secretary Josef's fury loomed over the bunker meeting alongside Comrade Loria's grinning menace. Throughout the room, white faces betrayed expectations of purges for the capital's humiliation. Unexpectedly, Loria proposed solidarity rather than executions. He suggested releasing imprisoned mages and officers from concentration camps to fight the external threat. Through the Politburo, astonishment rippled at the constructive proposal from the purge enforcer. The political officers agreed unanimously under threat of being blamed for defense failures. For the priority of resisting the Empire, principles bent easily. In the unified states, a man named John examined heavy tractors at a factory. He negotiated for precision pocket watches from the Skunk Association to aid his nation's military. Eventually, these purchases would reach the Commonwealth forces facing the Empire. The Commonwealth sought durable equipment for defensive battles. Days later, at Horton Bard Training Base in the Commonwealth, Mary Sue wrote letters home. Amid the monotonous military rations, homesickness ached for her grandmother's apple pie. Letters home required mentioning the horrible food and missing desserts. Entering the shooting examination booth, she prepared for her practical skills test. Suspicion prickled her instincts regarding the rifle's condition. To ensure the weapon functioned properly, she requested tools for disassembly and cleaning. Her request demonstrated proper inspection habits that set her apart. Revealing the true test, the instructor produced boxes containing their personal rifles. With her own properly maintained weapon, she aimed and fired, achieving decent results. Cadets discussed rumors back in the barracks about the Devil of the Rhine decimating a Commonwealth mage company. Quietly, Mary sipped her tea while feeling the legend belonged to another world entirely. She could barely fly and shoot simultaneously, let alone face a named. In her heart, determination mingled with worry about facing such nightmares in combat. For now, the young recruits enjoyed their ignorance, dreaming of heroics before the storm reached them. Clouds hung heavy over the Dodo Bird Strait as the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion completed their patrol. Raising her voice, Major Tanya von Degurechaff recalled the scattered units. Relief washed through the formation upon learning no one had gone missing. Captain Weiss assured the commander that only light wounds needed tending. Inwardly, Tanya lamented Lieutenant Grant's lack of anti-ship combat experience. Orders went out for Lieutenant Serebriakov to lead the main body home. Jesting about dying for radical heterosexualist beliefs, Weiss flew to the rear. Self-loathing churned in Tanya's gut after nearly praising Being X. Suddenly, Weiss's frantic voice cut through the wireless with news of approaching fighters. Commands to drop altitude immediately prepared the unit for surface ambush. Recognition of friendly identification marks halted the evasive dive. The 103rd Fighter Wing banked to reveal their hazy camouflaged wings. Memories of shared battles on the Rhine warmed Tanya's professional demeanor. Back at base, paperwork awaited the exhausted mages. Groans escaped Grants as he struggled with administrative forms. Efficiently, Weiss and Serebriakov finished their own reports. Tanya dispatched the pair to deliver gifts to their fighter allies. Regarding Unified States volunteers, a commander's meeting demanded her attention. Legal experts debated whether those troops counted as Commonwealth Army proper.
Aggressive targeting of the volunteers was proposed to deter intervention.
Political ramifications clouded the officers' enthusiasm for immediate action. Senior leadership insisted on awaiting general staff guidance instead. Frustration gnawed at Tanya through the night as she analyzed the Empire's predicament. Stretching across multiple fronts, military resources neared breaking point. Dawn broke with renewed resolve stamped across Tanya's features. Before the assembled battalion, she announced a shift to anti-surface verification strikes. Questions rose from Grants about changing tactics amid fierce Western combat. Intelligence about the volunteer army's true nature was whispered to Weiss. Survival outweighs victory in our priorities, the major emphasized covertly. Experimental anti-armor equipment hung ridiculously heavy on Tanya's small frame. Static filled the wireless as weather deteriorated over the strait. Radio silence became necessary despite the inability to reach Galba control. Commonwealth radar stations blared warnings of the approaching Imperial unit. In a briefing room, Mary Sue stiffened at news of the Devil of the Rhine's penetration. Drake warned the Yankee battalion that Tanya's unit operated like a single deadly organism. What if we cannot retreat? Mary asked with naive determination. Get shot down gracefully and survive, Drake advised the inexperienced cadets. Finally, contacting the 23rd, Galba Control aborted the main operation. New orders designated the elite unit for an immediate combat search and rescue mission. Outrage bubbled in Tanya's throat at the lack of proper rescue equipment or signal codes. General staff approval forced her compliance despite the reckless circumstances. Weiss and Grants descended to search the ground while Tanya provided aerial cover. On the horizon, Two enemy mage battalions materialized. Interdiction became the sole focus while subordinates hunted for survivors. Faint signs of movement led Weiss to a crash site devoid of pilots. Intercepted police wireless chatter revealed the prisoner's destination. Serebiakov led a company to assault the police convoy securing the package. Agreeing to attempt a landing in hostile territory, 4 fighter planes from the 1/3 3rd Wing rushed to help. Yankee battalion commanders dismissed Drake's urgent advice to gain altitude. From 8,000 feet, the battalion executed a perfect decapitation strike. The Unified States unit leader died in the opening salvo. Chaos swallowed the volunteer formation as command structure collapsed. Emergency control was assumed by Drake, who ordered an immediate fighting withdrawal. Fury propelled Mary Sue toward the Blonde Devil despite the tactical disadvantage. Slamming her wooden rifle stock into the charging cadet's abdomen, Tanya attacked violently. Transfixed by recognition of her father's gun, Mary froze in mid-air combat. Even a full magazine from the submachine gun failed to kill the surprisingly resilient opponent. Optical sniping formulas forced Tanya to evade and regroup. Explosion formulas answered the desperate defense of the protective mage. Mary plummeted toward Earth, clutching her wounds and newborn hatred. In her heart, vengeance cemented itself against the Imperial officer who killed her father. Withdrawal signals flashed across the formation as the package lifted off, covering their retreat. Smoke and explosive formulas screened them from battered volunteers. Safe return brought grim satisfaction at having pioneered aerial rescue tactics. On June 25th of Unified Year 1926, Lieutenant Colonel Tanya von Degurechaff sorted paperwork at a General Staff recuperation facility outside the Imperial capital. Analysis of recent aerial combat reports consumed her attention. Rear area duty remained the motivational force behind every calculation she made. The declining quality of cold coffee provided a bitter metaphor for the Empire's deteriorating strategic situation. Recent promotion to Magic Lieutenant Colonel brought private satisfaction. Lieutenant General von Zitur praised her treatise unit usage and operational maneuvers in the current war, suggesting a permanent desk assignment with the General Staff Strategic Research Office. Tranquil nights without patrol missions represented the first step toward the normalcy she craved. An unexpected appearance by Captain Weiss at her office door interrupted the calm. The Vice Commander requested that the entirety of the 23rd Aerial Mage Battalion continue serving under her command in a new Kampfgruppe. Bewilderment crossed Tanya's features since no such assignment existed in her understanding. A telephone summons from Lieutenant General von Zitur interrupted their discussion. Approval of her strategic proposals for immediate implementation came through the line. Orders to form the Salamander Kampfgruppe and deploy to the Eastern Front within 5 days replaced triumph with horror. Disbelief petrified her momentarily at the impossibly short timeline. Absolute obedience remained mandatory despite internal screams of protest. Acceptance of the command hardened into professional resolve. Weiss saluted with exhilaration at the prospect of following her into combat. In Unified Year 1980, a World TV Network correspondent named Andrew narrated the legend of the salamander to Black Friday shoppers in New York. The metaphor described soldiers transformed into uncontrollable brats through excessive indulgence. 2 days later, Tanya reviewed personnel lists at the General Staff Office main building. Documents revealed assignments of inexperienced 2nd Reserve Infantry battalions and obsolete replacement artillery. Murderous rage contorted her features. An equipment section major faced her explosive confrontation regarding the inferior allocations. Demands for modern model G-tanks instead of obsolete model IVD training vehicles followed. General von Rommel's letter facilitated an exchange of armor for urgently needed fuel supplies. Requisition requests for seized Republic armored vehicles to convert into self-propelled guns further burdened the bewildered supply officer. Lieutenant General von Zitur faced audacious requests for an additional mage company the following morning. Skepticism marked the general's initial response given existing shortages. Necessity of an anvil to support the aerial battalion's hammer justified the request.
Reluctant approval came for a company of raw recruits barely half-trained.
Explosive fury greeted the officers of the 332nd Infantry Battalion when they questioned her authority and demanded independent discretion. She deemed immediate replacement necessary. A battalion of Fallschirmjäger paratroopers from the 2nd Guard Division offered the solution. Negotiations with the 2nd Guard Division secured their transfer despite bureaucratic obstacles. On July 1st, the establishment ceremony convened in a General Staff Office conference room. Standing upon a raised dais, Tanya addressed assembled troops, her childlike appearance contrasting with the bloodthirsty veterans before her. New infantry and artillery components received threats disguised as welcoming smiles. Colonel von Lergen stormed into Lieutenant General von Zitour's office the next day. Inside that chamber, vehement protests erupted against Tanya's appointment and her appropriation of elite paratrooper units. Zitour dismissed these concerns while explaining the operational necessity of testing Kampfgruppe doctrine. Discussion shifted to Operation Lakeside, the eastern offensive designed to annihilate Federation field armies. In the Federation capital of Moskva on July 8th, Commissar Loria presented strategic proposals to Comrade General Secretary Josef. Ceding border territory would draw Imperial forces into urban attrition battles. Blocking units from the Commissariat for Internal Affairs would prevent Federation retreats. Concentration and labor camp inmates would serve as expendable reinforcements. Personal obsession drove Loria's specific request to capture Tanya von Degurechaff. By July 18th, the Salamander Kampfgruppe conducted flank patrol operations across muddy eastern terrain. A deliberately relaxed posture characterized Tanya's approach to the armed hiking assignment.